Now, before I can actually make any kind of podcast episode for you guys, I want to explain one thing. Have you guys heard about Anchor? It's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain how. One, it's free. Two, there's just many tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. And it'll distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other things like iTunes and such. You can make more money from your podcast regardless on how much you have already. So it's like extra money. Hello, who doesn't like free money? And then, it's everything you need to make a podcast all in one spot. So whenever you can, just download the free Anchor app at, your iTunes store, your Apple store, or your Google Play store, or go to anchor.fm to get started. Thanks, y'all. Morning. How is everybody? I hope everybody's doing well today. Now, I'm doing this a little bit early, because usually whenever I plan on doing my little story time with Izzii, it's later on during the evening, but I thought that I could come on here today and do a little story for story time. Now, I am doing a story called The Facts in the Case of M. Valdemar. If you want to read along with it, or if you have, the story yourself with like on a piece of paper or anything like that, but I couldn't put it I couldn't put it in the description, but you can find it at poestories.com. That's POESTORIES.com. Poe Stories. So, you're invited to join in with me. I'm in a little bit of a bind, but I decided, why not just come on here and share a little love time with y'all, because you guys are like my family and all that stuff. So hi. And hello to you, Miss Tina and Laura. Ooh, Miss and Miss. Hello. Hope you're doing well today. But yes, this is going to be my story of the day, and I'm very excited to share it. Now, is going to uh it's a little long, but not too long, so hopefully we can get through it very well. Pretty good, pretty well on here. On the description before pushing it, it says talking with a dead man. Wow. Who's dead? Mr. Valdemar? Valdemar. I think that's how you say his name. Yeah, we're gonna go with that. So, while waiting on somebody to come and meet me here in, reality, not through virtual, I I decided to come on here and, tell a little story. So hopefully it's enjoyable to you as it is enjoyable to me every single time. So yeah. But it is by Edgar Allan Poe, published in 1845. So long ago. Lord have mercy. So long. But yes. So let's get right on it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Storytime with Izzii, The Facts in the Case of M. Valdemar, by Edgar Allan Poe, published in 1845. Of course, I shall not pretend to consider it any matter of wonder that the extraordinary case of M. Valdemar has excited discussion. It would have been a miracle had it not, especially under the circumstances. Through the desire of all parties concerned to keep the affair from the public, at least for the present, or until we had farther opportunities for investigation, through our endeavors to effect this, a garbled or exaggerated account made its way into society and became the source of many unpleasant misrepresentations. and, very naturally, of a great deal of disbelief. It is now rendered necessary that I give the facts. As far as I comprehend them myself, they are succinctly these. My attention for the last 3 years had been repeatedly drawn to the subject of mesmerism, and about 9 months ago it occurred to me, quite suddenly, that in the series of experiments made hitherto, there had been a very remarkable and most unaccountable omission. No person had as yet been mesmerized in articulo mortis. It remained to be seen, first, whether in such condition there existed in the patient any success, susceptibility to the magnetic influence. Secondly, whether, if any existed, it was impaired or increased by the condition. Thirdly, to what extent, or for how long a period, the encroachments of death might be arrested by the process. There were other points to be ascertained, but these most excited my curiosity, the last in especial, from the immensely important character of its consequences. Well, what do we have there? In looking around me for some subject by those means I might test these particulars, I was brought to think of my friend M. Ernest Valdemar, the well-known compiler of the Bibliotheca Forensica, an author under the nom de plume of Issachar Marx, of the Polish versions of Wallenstein and Gargantua. M. Valdemar, who has presided principally at Harlem, New York, since the year 1839, is, or was, particularly noticeable for the extreme spareness of his person. His lower limbs much resembling those of John Randolph, and also for the whiteness of his whiskers, in violent contrast to the blackness of his hair, the latter, in consequence, being very generally mistaken for a wig. His temperament was markedly nervous, and rendered him a good subject for mesmeric experiment. Well, what do we have here now? On 2 or 3 occasions I had put him to sleep with little difficulty, but was disappointed in other results which his peculiar constitution had naturally led me to anticipate. His will was at no period positively or thoroughly under my control, and in regard to clairvoyance, I could accomplish with him nothing to be relied upon. I always attributed my failure at these points to be the disordered state of his health. For some months previous to my becoming acquainted with him, his physicians had declared him in a confirmed this is this this is not sure how to say that. Wow. It was his custom, indeed, to speak calmly of his approaching dissolution as of a matter neither to be avoided nor regretted. When the ideas to which I have alluded first occurred to me, it was of course very natural and that I should think of M. Valdemar. I knew the steady philosophy of the man too well to apprehend any scruples from him, and he had no relatives in America who would be likely to interfere. I spoke to him frankly upon the subject, and, to my surprise, his interest seemed vividly excited. I say to my surprise, for, although he had always yielded his person freely to my experiments, he had never before given me any tokens of sympathy with what I had. His disease was of that character which would admit of exact calculation in respect to the epoch of its termination in death, and it was finally arranged between us that he would send for me about 24 hours before the period announced by his physicians as that of his decease. It is now rather more than 7 months since I received from M. Valdemar himself the subjoined note. My dear Poe, or P, and then it has a line under. You may as well come now. D and F are agreed that I cannot hold out beyond tomorrow midnight, and I think they have hit the time very nearly. Valdemar. I received this note within half an hour after it was written, and in 15 minutes more I was in the dying man's chamber. I had not seen him for 10 days, and was appalled by the fearful alteration which the brief interval had wrought in him. His face wore a leaden hue, the eyes were utterly lustreless, and the emaciation was so extreme that the skin had been broken through by the cheekbones. His expectoration was excessive. The pulse was barely perceptible. He retained, nevertheless, in a very remarkable manner, both his mental power and a certain degree of physical strength. He spoke with distinctness, took some palliative medicines without aid, and when I entered the room was occupied in penciling memoranda in a pocketbook. He was propped up in the bed by pillows. Doctors D and F were in attendance. After pressing Valdemar's hand, I took these gentlemen aside, and obtained from them a minute account of the patient's condition. The left lung had been for 18 months in a semi-osseous or cartilaginous state, and was, of course, entirely useless for all purposes of vitality. The right, in its upper portion, was also partially, if not thoroughly, ossified, while the lower region was merely a mass of purulent tubercles. Yeah, I'm sorry. Tubercles running one into another. Several extensive perforations existed, and at one point permanent adhesion to the ribs had taken place. These appearances in the lower lobe were of comparatively recent date. The ossification had proceeded with very unusual rapidity. No sign of it had discovered a month before, and the adhesion had only been observed during the 3 previous days. Independently of the phthisis, the patient was suspected of aneurysm of the aorta, but on this point the osseous symptoms rendered an exact diagnosis impossible. It was the opinion of both physicians that M. Valdemar would die about midnight on the morrow, which was Sunday. It was then 7 o'clock on Saturday evening. On quitting the invalid's bedside to hold a conversation with myself, Doctors D and F had bidden me a final farewell. It had not been their intention to return, but at my request they agreed to look in upon the patient about 10 the next night. When they had gone, I spoke freely with M. Valdemar on the subject of his approaching dissolution, as well as, more particularly, of the experiment proposed. He still professed himself quite willing and even anxious to have it made, and urged me to commence it at once. A male and a female nurse were in attendance, but I did not feel myself altogether at liberty to engage in a task of this character with no more reliable witnesses than these people, in case of sudden accident might prove. I therefore postponed operations until about 8 the next night, when the arrival of a medical student with whom I had some acquaintances, Mr. Theodore L., I guess Lionel or something, relieved me from farther embarrassment. It had been my design originally to wait for the physicians, but I was induced to proceed, first by the urgent entreaties of M. Valdemar, and secondly by my conviction that I had not a moment to lose, as he was evidently sinking fast. Mr. L. was so kind as to accede to my desire that he would take notes of all that occurred, and it is from his memoranda that what I now have to relate is, for the most part, either condensed or copied verbatim. It wanted about 5 minutes of 8 when, taking the patient's hand, I begged him to state, as distinctly as he could, to Mr. L, whether he, Mr. Valdemar, was entirely willing that I should make the experiment of mesmerizing him in his then condition. He replied feebly, yet quite audibly, "Yes, I wish to be mesmerized," adding immediately afterwards, "I fear you have deferred it too long." While he spoke thus, I commenced the passes which I had already found most effectual in subduing him. He was evidently influenced with the first lateral stroke of my hand across his forehead, but although I exerted all my powers, no farther perceptible effect was induced until some minutes after 10 o'clock, when Doctors D and F called, according to appointment. I explained to them in a few words what I designed, and as they opposed to objection, saying that the patient was already in the death agony, I proceeded without hesitation, exchanging, however, the lateral passes for downward ones, and directing my gaze entirely into the right eye of the sufferer. By this time his pulse was imperceptible, and his breathing was stertorous, and at intervals of half a minute. This condition was nearly unaltered for a quarter of an hour. At the expiration of this period, however, a natural, although a very deep sigh escaped from the bosom of the dying man, and the stertorous breathing ceased. That is to say, its stertorousness was no longer apparent. The intervals were undiminished. The patient's extremities were of an icy coldness. At 5 minutes before 11, I perceived unequivocal signs of the mesmeric influence. The glassy roll of the eye was changed for that expression of uneasy inward examination which is never seen except in cases of sleepwalking, or sleep-waking, in which it is quite impossible to make mistake. With a few rapid lateral passes, I made the lids quiver as in incipient sleep, and with a few more I closed them altogether. I was not satisfied, however, with this, but continued the manipulations vigorously, and with the fullest exertion of the will, until I had completely stiffened the limbs of the slumberer, after placing them in a seemingly easy position. The legs were at full length, the arms were nearly so, and reposed on the bed at a moderate distance from the loins. The head was very slightly elevated. When I had accomplished this, it was fully midnight, and I requested the gentlemen present to examine M. Valdemar's condition. After a few experiments, they admitted him to be in an unusually perfect state of mesmeric trance. The curiosity of both the physicians were greatly excited. Dr. D resolved at once to remain with the patient all night, while Dr. F took leave with a promise to return at daybreak. Mr. L and the nurses remained. We left Valdemar entirely undisturbed until about 3 o'clock in the morning, when I approached him and found him in precisely the same condition as when Dr. F went away. Sorry. He lay in the same position. The pulse was imperceptible. The breathing was gentle, scarcely noticeable unless through the application of a mirror to the lips. The eyes were closed naturally, and the limbs were as rigid and as cold as marble. Still, the general appearance was certainly not that of death. As I approached Valdemar, I made a kind of half effort to influence his right arm into pursuit of my own, as I passed the latter gently to and fro above this person. In such experiments with this patient, I had never perfectly succeeded before, and assuredly I had little thought of succeeding now. But to my astonishment, his arm very readily, although feebly, followed every direction I assigned it with mine. I determined to hazard a few words of conversation. Valdemar, I said.
Storytime with Izzii. The facts in the case of M. Valdemar from 1845. How's it going, Sarah? Storytime with Izzii, presented by Sarah Del Valle. The facts in the case of Valdemar from 1845. Let's take a look. I wonder if this here is going to be part of, is it poestories.com? See, well, if it is, I'm going to find out right now. See, I'm going to type on poetry, but I think it's not going to be in poetry. It might be in stories. The facts in the case of Valdemar, it might not even be in on poststories.com. I was not here for that there. All right. So let's see. Let's find out where. Well, she doesn't have the poststories.com website posted here, so it might be from her book or elsewhere. What a mystery you've left me with, Sarah. What a mystery. So, the facts in the case of Valdemar. Well, maybe she did. Maybe it is on. Maybe I just missed
You
it. Let me
could,
look more carefully.
if you go on poststories.com, look under stories, and it's under the under there.
See, that's what I was saying. I found it.
Yay!
See, I was just joking, y'all. I found it. I knew it was there.
Just
I was
making
just
sure we
pausing.
knew.
I was just pausing for effect until you got back. Everything good?
Yeah, you did very well. You did very well. The
All
reading's
right.
pretty good
So,
so far. He's already in a mesmeric state, in a trance state.
so this is the one. Is this the play?
No, this is not the play. This is the other. This is another one.
Oh,
This is just
why?
a story, talking with a dead
Okay.
man.
What's the play that you wanted to read?
That's the mesmeric revelation.
Okay. All right. So where are you in this one? Because I
I
just jumped
am
on board here.
I am halfway down and it's where it says no pain, I am dying.
Um, what blue vocabulary is close in that approximation? Maybe that'll help me find it.
Okay, you're gonna look for incipient, and then you're gonna go down a little bit from there.
Okay, so it's down a little bit from incipient.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I see. Okay, good. I see incipient. All right,
Then you're gonna go
got
down
it.
a little
Okay,
bit, and then there's a part that says no pain, I am dying.
all right. I got you.
Yes. Yes, sir. Yeah, the poestories.com wouldn't fit in my description because
Okay.
the title is so long.
Yeah, no problem. Well, I've caught up now, so uh, Mr. Valle, will you care to continue?
But of course.
All right then.
Alright. Thank you. I did not think of it advisable to disturb him further than just then, and nothing more was said or done until the arrival of Dr. F., who came a little before sunrise and expressed unbounded astonishment at finding the patient still alive. After feeling the pulse and applying a mirror to the lips, he requested me to speak to the sleepwaker again. I did so, saying, "M. Valdemar, do you still sleep?" As before, some minutes elapsed ere a reply was made, and during the interval the dying man seemed to be collecting his energies to speak. At my fourth repetition of the question, he said, very faintly, almost inaudibly, "Yes, still asleep, dying." It was now the opinion, or rather the wish, of the physicians that M. Valdemar should be suffered to remain undisturbed in his present apparently tranquil condition, until death should supervene, and this, it was generally agreed, must now take place within a few minutes. I concluded, however, to speak to him once more, and merely repeated my previous question. While I spoke, there came a marked change over the countenance of the sleep-waker. The eyes rolled themselves slowly open, the pupils disappearing upwardly. The skin generally assumed a cadaverous hue, resembling not so much parchment as white paper, and the circular hectic spots which hitherto had been strongly defined in the center of each cheek went out at once. I use this expression because the suddenness of their departure put me in mind of nothing so much as the extinguishment of a candle by a puff of the breath. The upper lip, at the same time, writhed itself away from the teeth, which it had previously covered completely, while the lower jaw fell with an audible jerk, leaving the mouth widely extended and disclosing in full view the swollen and blackened tongue. I presume that no member of the party then present have been unaccustomed to deathbed horrors, but so hideous beyond the conception was the appearance of M. Valdemar at this moment, that there was a general shrinking back from the region of the bed. I now feel that I have reached a point of this narrative at which every reader will be startled into positive disbelief. It is my business, however, simply to proceed. There was no longer the faintest sign of vitality in M. Valdemar, and concluding him to be dead, we were consigning him to the charge of the nurses, when a strong vibratory motion was observable in the tongue. This continued for perhaps a minute. At the expiration of this period, there issued from the distended and motionless jaws a voice, such as it would be madness in me to attempt describing. There are, indeed, two or three epithets which might be considered as applicable to it in part. I might say, for example, that the sound was harsh and broken and hollow, but the hideous whole is indescribable, for the simple reason that no similar sounds have ever jarred upon the ear of humanity. There were two particulars, nevertheless, which I thought then, and still think, might fairly be stated as characteristic of the intonation, as well adapted to convey some idea of its unearthly peculiarity. In the first place, the voice seemed to reach our ears, at least mine, from a vast distance, or from some deep cavern within the earth. In the second place, it impressed me, I fear indeed that it will be impossible to make myself comprehended, as gelatinous or glutinous matters impressed the sense of touch. I've spoken both of sound and of voice. I mean to say that the sound was one of distinct, of even wonderfully, thrillingly distinct syllabification. M. Valdemar spoke, obviously in reply to the question I had propounded to him a few minutes before. I had asked him, it will be remembered, if he still slept. He now said, yes, no, I have been sleeping, and now, I am dead. No person present even affected to deny or attempted to repress the unutterable shuddering horror which these few words thus uttered were so well calculated to convey. Mr. L., the student, swooned. The nurses immediately left the chamber and could not be induced to return. My own impressions I would not pretend to render intelligible to the reader. For nearly an hour we busied ourselves silently, without the utterance of a word, in endeavors to revive Mr. L. When he came to himself, we addressed ourselves again to an investigation of M. Valdemar's condition. It remained in all respects as I have last described it, with the exception that the mirror no longer afforded evidence of respiration. An attempt to draw blood from the arm failed. I should mention, too, that this limb was no farther subject to my will. I endeavored in vain to make it follow the direction of my hand. The only real indication, indeed, of the mesmeric influence was now found in the vibratory movement of the tongue, whenever I addressed in Valdemar a question. He seemed to be making an effort to reply, but had no longer sufficient volition. To queries put to him by any other person than myself he seemed utterly insensible. Although I endeavored to place each member of the company in mesmeric rapport with him, I believe that I have now related all that is necessary to an understanding of the sleep-waker's state at this epoch. Other nurses were procured, and at 10 o'clock I left the house in company with the two physicians, Mr. L. In the afternoon we all called again to see the patient. His condition remained precisely the same. We had now some discussion as to the propriety and feasibility of awakening him, but we had little difficulty in agreeing that no good purpose would be served by doing so, or by so doing. It was evident that, so far, death, or what is usually termed death, had been arrested by the mesmeric process. It seemed clear to us all that to awaken in Valdemar would be merely to ensure his instant, or at least his speedy dissolution. From this period until the close of last week, an interval of nearly 7 months, we continued to make daily calls at M. Valdemar's house, accompanied, now and then, by medical and other friends. All this time the sleeper waker, remained exactly as I have last described him. The nurse's attention was continual. It was on Friday last that we finally resolved to make the experiment of awakening, or attempting to awaken him, and it is the, perhaps, unfortunate result of this latter experiment which has given rise to so much discussion in private circles, to so much of what I cannot help thinking unwarranted popular feeling. For the purpose of relieving M. Valdemar from the mesmeric trance, I made use of the customary passes. These, for a time, were unsuccessful. The first indication of revival was afforded by a partial descent of the iris. It was observed as especially remarkable that this lowering of the pupil was accompanied by the profuse outflowing of a yellowish ichor from beneath the lids, of a pungent and highly offensive odor. It was now suggested that I should attempt to influence the patient's arm, as heretofore. I made the attempt and failed, Dr. F then intimated a desire to have me put a question. I did so as follows. M. Valdemar, can you explain to us what are your feelings or wishes now? There was an instant return of the hectic circles on the cheeks. The tongue quivered, or rather rolled violently in the mouth, although the jaws and lips remained rigid as before. And at length the same hideous voice which I have already described broke forth. For God's sake! Quick! Quick! Put me to sleep, or quick! Waken me! Quick! I say to you that I am dead! I was thoroughly unnerved, and for an instant remained undecided what to do. At first I made an endeavor to recompose the patient, but failing in this through total abeyance of the will, I retraced my steps and as earnestly struggled to awaken him. In this attempt I soon saw that I should be successful, or at least I soon fancied that my success would be complete, and I am sure that all in the room were prepared to see the patients awaken. For what really occurred, however, it is quite impossible that any human being could have been prepared. As I rapidly made the mesmeric passes amid ejaculations of dead, dead, absolutely bursting from the tongue and not from the lips of the sufferer, his whole frame at once, within the space of a single minute, or even less, shrunk, crumbled, absolutely rotted away beneath my hands. Upon the bed before that whole company, there lay a nearly liquid mass of loathsome, of detestable putridity. Ta-da! The end. Well, that was quite a story, you guys. That was quite a story. Bring Hakeem back up here. Yes, that was some story, like for real. They were talking to a dead dude. He just wanted to die. He just wanted to hurry up and die, I guess. I don't know.
Man, well, he did, I see, in detestable putridity at the
Putridity.
end.
That was just that was some trancing there.
It was, that was actually pretty gross. The way he ended, he says, as I rapidly made the mesmeric passes amid ejaculations of dead, dead, absolutely bursting from the tongue and not from the lips of the sufferer, his whole frame at once, within the space of a single minute, or even less, shrunk, crumbled, absolutely rotted away beneath my hands.
Yeah.
Upon the bed before that whole company, there lay a nearly liquid mass of loathsome, of detestable putridity.
Ugh.
That
He
is
just felt the guy just like
disgusting.
"Ugh." It was done. Mm.
Yeah, but not even just fell apart. He fell apart like rotting. That's just,
Ugh.
hmm,
I bet. And then like before he was talking about how there was an odor, like it's just a pungent, highly
yeah,
offensive
a
odor.
pungent. Hmm.
Ooh. Ooh.
Yes.
Lord. For some reason I feel it. I feel like this I feel like it's just ugh. That's awesome though. That's awesome. I don't know. That's just awesome. I wanted to be in Poe's part. I want to do Poe. I want to feel like what Poe felt on this. I just want to see it happen. I want to see something like that happen. Like where it's just I don't know. It's not saying I'm creepy or weird and all, but it's like the type of feel like
What? You want
what
to see something like that?
I want to be in his part. I want to be in his life right there. I just want to
Hmm.
be him that in that moment, just to see it actually happen like that. Like what? How does that work? I want to see it work.
Well, you know,
That sounds
just look
gross. I
at
know.
plants. Just look at plants decaying in the yard. I mean, it's all the same. A fruit, a banana, or something like that. So
Yeah,
it's similar.
man. How does it like? It's just. He was dead he was basically dead the whole entire time. They knew he was dying. Everybody knew he was dying. That's why he had the nurses and the people, the doctors and everything with him. But I don't I just want to that's just weird.
Hold on, I'll be right back.
Okay. It was like a beautiful weirdness, I guess. I don't know, but it was just a beautiful story and just so descriptive on how he was going through it. Yes, I want to know more. Give me more. Well, there was some Latin words in here, like the in articulo mortis, the moment of death. That's what that means. And then you had the other one, which is the nom de plume, which is a pen name. It's a pseudonym adopted by an author for various reasons. So yeah, yeah.
Nom de plume, yeah. Name of the pen.
I'm trying to figure. Okay, so the one that I couldn't really say very well is a progressively wasting or consumptive condition, especially pulmonary tuberculosis. So it's basically like a disease, I guess. Yep.
Well, yeah.
It's the
Well, you
phthisis.
said.
Phthisis. I don't know. I forgot how I couldn't figure out how to say it, so I said it the best way I could possibly say it.
I think it's probably just phthisis.
Really? It's
Phthisis.
phthisis? Dang.
I'm not gonna mess with that word. It could be phthisis,
See,
or phthisis.
I said phthisis the first time or
Yeah.
pathesis, like just like.
I mean, look, I'm not the expert on it. I don't know. It's like it could be phthisis or orthisis. I don't know.
But
But that
I
would
will
be.
say this. I rocked on some of these other words. Yep. Mm.
You did.
Yes, I did. I most certainly did.
No, I know. I'm saying you did.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
That was a statement.
It was all in the
It was a
very beginning
confirmation. You
that
did.
it was all in the very beginning that it was harder words, but then I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna keep on saying it the way it looks like right now because I can't look it up right now at the moment of how to
Well, here
say
we
it.
go. It's actually pronounced phthisis.
See, I know there was something about that word.
It's pronounced phthisis. Like
Isis.
ISIS, phthisis.
Oh, that makes sense.
ISIS got some thick phthisis.
That actually makes sense right there. It really does.
Like ISIS, phthisis.
Phthisis.
It's
So the
pulmonary
phthisis is like
tuberculosis or similar progressive systemic disease.
yes, phthisis. Well, I was close. I was close. We were close. We were close people to say the right word, but it's okay. That's awesome though. That's a cool word. I'm gonna start using it for. I don't know what I'm gonna use it for, but I'm gonna start using it.
Phthisis. Okay. I'm gonna give you some advices about how to clear up your phthisis.
There we go.
If you want to know how to clear up your phthisis, I have the right advices.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, so
And then
that's
they had what is it called? Where is it at? Well, all the words that were harder to pronounce were all in the beginning. So, but I got through it the best way I could. At least I knew some of these, like clairvoyance and
yeah.
scruples. Scruples. That's a funny word. Scruples.
I think you missed abeyance though. I think you said abeyance, but it's abeyance.
Which
Um,
one? Which one is that one?
it's closer towards the end. Abey. I didn't
Oh,
exactly pay too close attention, but it was yeah. It's actually the last vocabulary word in the
oh.
third to last paragraph.
Is how do you say it? Abeyance?
Abeyance. Yeah, I think so.
How did I say it? Abeyance?
It's possible. I could have heard that incorrectly, but that's what it sounded like you said.
I was close though. I was close enough.
Yes. I'm pretty sure that in some accent, it's a bias.
Alliance.
If I was from Australia, I might say a bias.
I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take it.
So
Oh,
there's that.
but this story was pretty mesmeric.
It was,
It was pretty what is it called? There's a word for this that I'm thinking and I can't think of it. The word itself. Oh my god. What is that word? It's pretty oh my god. You know what? It'll come to me. Um it's very descriptive though. The best way he made it descriptive enough. It was very
were you
Were
thinking
you
of the
thinking of
word
the word?
graphic, maybe?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Oh my god. Why couldn't I think of that word? It was so easy.
It's one of those tip of the tongue things, you know?
Yeah. It's very graphic. Oh god. I liked it. I liked this story. Man, this story brought some good feels.
Yeah, I can imagine. It seems like it's a good one.
Oh god. Okay. All right, we're good on this. We're good. Um, but yes, that was the facts of the case in the case of M. Valdemar, who was alive for the first few days, and he went into a trance and died at some point, rotted right under the hands of Mr. Poe. Why couldn't that be Poe? I want to be Poe.
Well, the interesting thing about that is that I can't imagine. I mean, I can imagine that probably actually happened. That that there's some part of the human brain that they tapped into that was able to keep a person alive, or at least some functions that seemed like living under a hypnotic trance. That the person was put in a trance before they died, and then as they died, it kept some certain functions going. I wouldn't be surprised. It seems like something that would be a factor of hypnosis, clinical hypnosis too.
Mm, man, Poe. Oh god, I'm finding all this stuff, the funny, just funniness about this right now. I don't know why. Oh, most likely, Poe had his moments. Of course, he was put some guy in a trance just because he wanted to see if he can keep him alive or how long he could keep him alive. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and it became, it came out okay. The summary of this was, what does it say? If you go on the summaries under in the poststories.com, it says a man dying from tuberculosis asks his friend, the narrator of the story, to hypnotize him just before death. The event is witnessed by two doctors and a medical student. The results are interesting, to say the least. They were quite interesting, if I do say so myself. Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Yes, love it. Most likely the next one I will be reading when I come back on here will be the. Oof, that's a long one. Let me see if there's another one. Let's see. It's probably gonna be the Island of the Fae. Ooh, it's a poetic discussion. Well. What do we have here? That might be a few words that I do not say here. But yes, I appreciate you all for coming in and listening in and living this Poe life with me. It's Poe life. For all you Poe lovers out there. Oh, Lord have mercy. Okay. Alright. That was the reading of The Falling, or I'm sorry, I was looking at this other story. The Facts in the Case of M. Valdemar, published in 1845. You've been listening to Storytime with Izzii with her moderator, Mr. Hakeem Ali-Bocas Alexander. And thank you so very much for popping in, joining in, listening in, and we will see you next time. Is there
All right,
anything
you've
you'd
been
like to
listening to
say,
Storytime
sir?
with Izzii.
Oh, you gotta
Storytime with Izzii.
put your last piece of bread on there. Come on.
Oh yeah, you've been listening to Storytime with Izzii, presented by Sarah Del Valle, reading The Facts in the Case of M. Valdemar by Edgar Allan Poe, published in 1845. You can find the story on poestories.com if you'd like to read it for yourself at poestories.com. That's poestories.com. All right, Izzii. That was an awesome reading. Until next time.
Bye.
Sarah.
Yay!